everyone. Good evening. So today we are here with our panelists, and we're talking about healthy relationships. Before I begin anything, I'm just going to do a general acknowledgement of country, and then we'll begin with the introductions. So I begin today because we're all from different lands and it's online. I'm just going to do a general acknowledgement. I begin today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today and pay my respects to their elders past and present. I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Island peoples here today or in the comments or someone watching. So welcome again. I hope everyone's having a great lockdown day. It was a beautiful day outside. My name's Nidhi. I am a co-founder of Sakhi Saheli, a little charity in the western suburbs of Melbourne, where we tackle mental health, isolation, and domestic violence. And as a professional, I'm a lawyer. Today, we have three panelists with us today, and I'm just going to pass on to the mic one after another. So give yourself a little introduction, just a little, who you are, what you do, and what brings you in to chat today. So I'll pass it on to Anu first. Anu Krishnan, please give yourself a little introduction.
Thank you, Nidhi. It's so good to be here having this very important conversation. My name is Anu Krishnan. I'm a social worker by background, and my work has been in various parts of social work, including family violence, mental health. My interest and passion both are trying to bring cultural understanding to how people who move away from their home countries cope, and in particular, third culture children and third culture upbringing, which I hope we'll get a chance to talk about today.
Thanks, Anu. That's really important work that we need in the Australian community right now. Now on to Raj, if you would just give yourself a little introduction.
Hi, I'm Raj. I'm the older brother of Rajiv Panchal, who's aligned with Shakti Health, so I help out with Shakti Health. I'm a mental health advocate at my work, where I'm a marketing strategist for a media agency. And also I can help with discussing I've been through OCD, depression, and an anxiety disorder as well, so I can talk my way through that.
Nice to meet you, Raj. And now on to Chaturi.
Hi, Nidhi. It's good to be here. So I'm currently a business management student, but I'm also a certified health and wellness coach. And I'll be looking to draw from the experiences of not just my clients, but also my own personal experience. And like Raj, I'm also a heavy mental health advocate. And I think it's so important, and really looking forward to this conversation.
Thanks, everyone. And I think we have such an array of experience today in panelists. We have someone who can work with family, someone who can work within themselves, and someone who can show friendships and just relationships in general, and whether it's romantic or friendships. So let me just properly introduce today's topic. It's healthy relationships. So today we'll just explore what it all means, what it is, and the key aspects that we're going to cover today is connections between mental health and relationships. Speaking from experience, the panelists would be giving us examples or any type of comments and expertise on South Asian specifically, working and living in South Asian communities. Relationship comes in an array of forms and shapes. It could be romantic, it could be platonic forms. We're also going to talk about gendered violence and power dynamics. Just a little disclaimer, if anything that we're saying or that you're hearing upsets you as a listener or as a panelist, reach out to relevant services and feel free to log off or go have a little walk. And the purpose of this chat is to just engage in an intergenerational dialogue about the topic and not to personally attack anyone. Just to give a little introduction on what I could do as a panelist as well, or someone just seeing this would be, personally, I've had a range of experiences in terms of relationships, in terms of family, changing relationships with the parents, grandparents, losing friendships, romantic relationships, gone through a few heartbreaks myself, trying to find love and what the meaning of love is. And I've gone through all that at the age of 24. So I think we can successfully say that this relationship plays a big part as soon as you're a little baby till the day you die. So without further ado, let's kick off to panel questions. Let's start off with a general question to all the panelists. What do you think a healthy relationship might look like? And maybe I can start off with Raj.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. For me, a healthy relationship looks like potentially the opposite of the dysfunctional relationship my parents had when I was younger. I'm just joking. That was probably one of the most difficult things for me to judge as to what that was my first example of a relationship. So particularly not a potentially healthy one. And as I grew older, I started to understand that a healthy relationship, probably more so in high school and uni, was more about allowing for each other's faults, but also allowing for opening up of space. So I thought a relationship when I was younger was probably very transactional. And it probably wasn't until uni when I started developing friendships with people outside of my culture, starting to do work, getting friends outside of my religion that I started to really understand that toing and froing, give and take, and also helping each other out was probably the basis for it, I think.
So just looking at the exploration of things and how you explored yourself throughout this time, and with so many different people who have come and kind of shown you, or like you've learned through their experiences as well, that's pretty amazing, I think. And seeing the contrary really helps you to see what really it is as a healthy relationship. Maybe I can pass it to Anu. What do you think a healthy relationship might look like? And maybe you can talk about as a family or as an individual.
No, thank you, Nidhi, for that question. I think thank you, Raj, for kicking us off. I think just picking up from what Raj was talking about, a healthy relationship is where you feel safe being yourself. I think that's one of the most important things in a healthy relationship. And when things are going well, it's easy to feel safe. I think if you feel safe when things are not going right, that's definitely a good relationship. And it doesn't necessarily only apply to parent-children relationships or romantic relationships, but any other relationships. Like if you consider relationships with people at work or your friends, if you have to watch what you're saying, watch how you convey a negative opinion, and you don't really feel safe because you think, and Raj spoke about transactional relationships. If you feel that if you do a transaction that the other person doesn't agree with, you're going to lose a friendship or a relationship, that's not really a very healthy relationship. And I think, like Raj said, we set some of the scenes for this from the time you're children. So you can't be what you've not seen. So if a healthy relationship hasn't been modeled for you, then it's going to be a long time until you find yourself in a relationship that you can recognize as being healthy, because you've never seen what that looks like. And I think that's really important for young people to have those things modeled. But yeah, safety. I think if you feel safe, then you're in a good, healthy relationship.
I think that summarizes what it pretty much is. Like, it's right on the nail. And then also, like, I love how you talk about maximizing yourself, not minimizing yourself with someone that you're with. You're actually there giving all that you have as a person, and not, shying away from who you are and not holding back as a personality. Maybe I can pass that question off specifically on friendship, maybe to Chaturi. What do you think a healthy relationship might look like in friendships?
Oh no!
I think that was such a heavy question. We had Chaturi just said bye, but it is look, from this personal experience. Maybe I can give a little introduction on what it might look like. I think friendships go through so many waves and troughs, and peaks and troughs of, you love someone one second and the next second it's just not vibing, and it's just going through that heartbreak, taking that risk of trusting someone so much is such a big step. And I think that sets you up to other relationships. I can say friendships has taught me how to behave, or how to manage my relationship with my parents, or how to manage my relationship romantically, because you can take so much risk with it. You can go all out and you can, like, really chase it. She's back. Maybe you would like to answer it now.
Yes, I'm so sorry. So, I love what Anu said about modeling. I think that's so powerful as kids. Like, even if we don't know like the characteristics of what a healthy relationship or isn't, we know innately whether it's good or bad, and I love that. I think when we're talking about friendships, one of the things that I'm mindful of is like listing out characteristics, because a lot of what my clients will sometimes tell me is, or I saw this post on Instagram and it said, if I have these 5 things, then I'm in a healthy relationship, and that's not always reality. Or people will say like, oh, I read this post, and if you're someone's toxic or someone's a narcissist, then they'll be doing this, and because of that, I avoided a relationship with this person. But when you actually go a little bit deeper, it's more than what one specific characteristic will tell you, and I think that's true is within relationships as well as friendships. I think the rule of thumb for me is if it feels good, I feel safe, then I know that's a positive relationship for me. If I know that um, I'm not feeling safe, then that's probably not the right relationship for me. But another layer to that is and probably we'll get into this over the rest of the show, but sometimes we have fears and we have patterns and we think that someone is rejecting us and when they're really not. And sometimes people, will say, "Oh, this friend did this. They're trying to hurt me." When what's actually happened is it's one of your own triggers that's coming up. So I think it's such a big question that there's a lot of little subtleties, but just knowing how it feels to you, and then if somebody is hurting you, it's to look at, is it the situation, or is it just something that's coming up for me, like am I feeling jealous or triggered, like is that my thing or is it that person? So I think it's hard to put it into specific bullet points, because a lot of things that frustrates me when I see posts on Instagram, and people think that like that's the only truth, but I think if we go deeper than that, it's really about how it feels to us.
I
That,
think, yeah, go on, Raj.
that's a really good point. I feel like maybe sometimes we are a society these days that is. So I'm a marketing strategist and I do a lot of social posts and advise on social content. And it's really great that she brought up Instagram, because Instagram is so snackable. The content is so digestible and it's quick and it's right in front of you. People take it for granted and sometimes don't fact check as much as they should or don't do. And so I'm worried these days that potentially we're a society that's looking at ticks the box relationships, because we want short, sharp, snackable information and we want to know if something's right or not. Potentially, if you're not in the right headspace, you might look at that and be like, I'm not ticking all those boxes. Is there something wrong with me in my relationship? When in fact, maybe you just need to build it further. I'm not really sure. I'm just throwing it out there.
And I think like it's pretty much you guys are like putting it out there saying that you need to explore yourself no matter what. You can't Google, is this guy right for me? You can't do that. Like Google's not going to tell you if he's the right person. If you're not in tune with your own feelings, you won't know. And I think that's that sentence that, okay, how do you feel, is such a heavy question. It sounds very easy to understand, but you truly don't know what you're feeling towards yourself and the other person. So that's a really, I think exploration within yourself is like what everyone has summarized. Safety, trust, those are the things that you need to feel and really sit with your feelings to be able to analyze whether this is good for me or bad for me. Moving on, I think this one would be a really good connection question would be, if it's an unhealthy relationship, how does someone's well-being, like how does that affect someone's well-being and their relationship, if someone's not feeling safe? Maybe I can start with Anu on this one.
No, I think that's so true. I think we are building up from, if you are in a healthy relationship, how you feel. If you're not growing in a relationship and nothing is static, I mean, our experiences change from day to day. And just from 2020 to 2021, I can guarantee each one of us has gone through numerous learning journeys and just found new levels of frustration or new levels of growth happen. If you're not growing in a relationship, then I don't think it's particularly healthy. But more than that, I think one of the things that happens in an unhealthy relationship is if you have to hide parts of yourself from the person that you're in a relationship with. Now, this could be with parents, for instance, or with siblings or friends or romantic relationships, and any relationship. If you have to hide something about yourself, whether it's a fear, whether it's a success, or if you are starting to question, now, if I come and share this news with this other person, are they going to feel threatened? Are they going to feel less accomplished? Like, I know many relationships where partners won't tell the other person that they've had a promotion just yet because the other person might have not gotten a promotion that they wanted, or they might not want to share something that they've done particularly well because some partners feel that it's a competition who gets more money or who does something better. That's not really healthy. And when you have to hide, if you have to watch what you're saying, it's not really good for your mental health, because again, you need to keep catching yourself, and that over time can really build on the stress. And we know now through bucket loads of research that stress has both an impact on your mental health, but more importantly, it actually has a very real impact on your physical health and well-being. So we really need to make sure that we don't start early relationships by getting used to that stress, because over time it just adds on. And if you've had a really bad experience with relationships when you're younger, you are going to be building on that stress to a point that by the time you are old enough to know better, you're already battling a number of physical and mental health concerns, which is not really a great place to be in.
That that looks like, to be honest, that answers really puts it really correctly. I think low to no growth, and as you were going through the bullet points, I literally felt, I was like, that's happened when I was in a relationship previously. And it like it's a point where you're just so confused. You think everything's going right, but in your everyday life you're confused and you're forgetful and you're just going, you're just stumbling through it, where you have no idea what's happening around you, but you're just still in that mess of a situation that you can't get yourself out of. And yeah, that's, I would say it's a really good summary. What about you, Raj? Have you ever felt unhealthy relationship, or what would you think would be a description of unhealthy relationships?
I would 100% agree with Anu. For me, it's been every time I've recognized that I've been in an unhealthy relationship, whether it's a romantic one at work or with a friend, I always get this like din that comes over me, and I feel like there's a cloud, or there's like something heavy or something, and it might take me actually a couple of days to realize I'm like, I feel off. What is going on? And it's probably a conversation that I've had that I've been putting off, or potentially I haven't been open with my friend and haven't said how they've sort of irked me, or like how I felt after a situation potentially that they drove. So I would say, as hippie and as spiritual as it sounds, it's more of a feeling for me, because I've recognized that that feeling has come up multiple times, and it's always because I need to work on something with someone.
And that must have taken a really long time to kind of get to
Oh
that
my God,
feeling.
yeah.
It's
Yes,
right?
absolutely. It wasn't probably until my late 20s that I was like, I recognize this feeling now. Something's wrong, something's off, I feel unbalanced, because I needed probably that time to get to used to that emotion or that feeling, and then do something about it, and then have the positive reinforcement that comes after it, for me to then recognize that, this feeling that I have is because I need to talk to somebody, or talk something out with someone else.
So you've recognized your correct points and red flags, I would say, where you're just like, oh, okay, this is not the territory I'm going to go into.
Yeah, and definitely, yeah, exactly right. And I also had a self-confidence issue during those times as well, and that's just off the back of having OCD when I was a child. And actually going to therapy and getting help for my OCD really helped correct a lot of those feelings, because when I was younger, I was probably pushing those away to be like, oh, this is just a weird feeling. It's like not recognizing, what my emotional center is feeling, or not recognizing what my internal thought is saying, and just sort of batting it off. And it took a few goes for me to have a process in place, and really helped to work with the therapist as well to really front up to it. And that really helped with my development with getting through that.
And I
Being
think that time really like showed you what it is. And I think I always describe, eerie feeling as having a splinter on your hand, and you just don't know. You're just trying to see something's hurting, but what is it? I don't know what it is. But once you find that splinter, it takes a really long to get it out. But once it's out, it's like a whole new hand that you have. So yeah, I think time would definitely show you, and it's not overnight growth, as Raj said. It takes a really long while to get to that innate feeling. Chaturi, what would you say about this? Anything you want to add?
I
What an
just
unhealthy relationship?
I just wanted to touch a couple of things, but I want to touch on what Raj said about OCD and anxiety, because the way you would help someone to a relationship that doesn't have OCD, that doesn't have anxiety, is very different than you would approach it with someone that doesn't have mental health. And because what OCD will do to you is it will make you constantly look for reassurance. So it's such a fine line with being able to say, okay, stop overthinking that, this relationship is fine. But the person with OCD, they're not able to do that. But you wouldn't tell that person that has OCD to go and ask for reassurance every single time, because that will fuel their OCD. So it's like this juggling act where you're trying to help someone through it, and someone might know that you're in an unhealthy relationship before you actually know it yourself. You have those gut feelings, and we know, but sometimes until we know, we don't know, and it is tough. And before you were talking about what's the effect of these unhealthy relationships, and I think Anu mentioned that it actually has a physical consequence. And one of my most favorite TED Talks is based on this study that spanned 75 years. It's one of the longest, human studies that have ever been done. And what they found was that loneliness kills, and it's not just loneliness as in someone single. It's someone that's lonely within a relationship, and that they find time after time that people that are in healthy relationships, even if they bicker, even if they have ups and downs, they live longer. Their memory stays sharper for longer, and that they're happier. So I think it's such an important topic to talk about. And I myself didn't, as educated as I am about toxic relationships and healthy relationships, I still managed to fall into them as well. So it's like it's it's funny now, but I think it's such an important thing, because we don't realize how much it can affect our mental health.
And I think that summarizes. I hate this saying, but there's a saying that you got to go through few bad apples to get to the good one. And I think these could be, as much as I I hate to be that person, but like learning is going to teach you over time. That's going to really show you taking that risk to be able to see what the negative is, to kind of take out the positive, is really important for you guys, like for everyone to kind of feel, okay, this is not something that I want to go into. What about yeah, go on, Anu.
I just wanted to add something, and I think both Chaturi and Raj touched on it. And I think it's quite normal for us to blame ourselves for falling into a toxic relationship, or even just an unhealthy relationship. All unhealthy relationships are not necessarily toxic, but all toxic relationships are definitely unhealthy. And Raj, I think, mentioned when you get positive reinforcement, sometimes you can be in a very unhealthy relationship, but get positive reinforcement for not being yourself. And this is typically what you see in parent-children relationships, and often in romantic relationships as well, where, if, for example, you don't really like maths, but your parents really want you to do well in maths, and what you really secretly like is perhaps studying history. Now, if your parents are not being excited by high scores in history, but they are very happy when you get an A+ in math, you're going to start doing that, even though that's not where your heart is. And I'm sorry, that's the only example that's come through, but you normally see this in extracurricular activities where children do exceedingly well because they really get the parents' positive feedback, and that's what they really want. but it's not making them happy. They're doing it, but it's not really making them happy. And I mean, all of you have obviously studied here in Australia, and I know so many young people from many of our communities who end up getting fantastic ATAs and then, doing the com law, or trying to get into medicine or engineering, because those are the courses that are going to guarantee you maybe economic benefits or career benefits. But if you secretly wanted to be a composer, but you've never actually built yourself up to share that with your parents, then even though they gave you fantastic positive feedback for doing well in year 12, is that really making you feel healthy or better about yourself? So, I sometimes feel that if you start thinking about this much earlier as a parent or as a young person, you do pave the way for a healthy relationship, because some of these learned habits, they're really difficult to kick. If you've spent a lifetime doing well in something you don't like, that's a very difficult habit to kick. So I just thought I'd add that there.
I think,
That's so
yeah, go on, Raj.
exactly my point. And also, what I like that you brought up the parenting with doing subjects that you might not like. I would also felt when I was growing up that there was also a burden to do those. And it's just one story that I remember. I was doing food science, and I went to go sit the UMAT at Deakin University to do law, basically. And so I had my calendar in my room, and I had the UMAT sort of like date on there that I'm going to sit it. And when it went past the day, I actually didn't go because I was super happy doing food science. So I was like, why do I study for this law thing? Like, why am I doing this? This is like stupid. I studied for it, and I didn't even go to the exam. Anyway, my mum asked me how it went, and I didn't even realize that she knew A, what it was, or B, that it had gone past. And she was like, yeah, I looked up that we're going to do the law exam. How did that go? And I was like, I didn't go. And a massive amount of burden just like slammed onto me during that point, because I just saw her like super disappointed. And I was like, oh, I think I just left the house. But I think that the burden of having to do something that you don't really want to do, especially when it goes to do with your career, I think that weighed really heavily on me personally anyway, when it came to that.
And I think I would add on to it, is as a commerce student myself and a massive people pleaser, that enforcement has put bad habits in my life, particularly where I look forward to, once I do something, get a new job or whatever, I look forward to just having my mom and dad say good job. And that really affects the way I do things, because that I make that process so much harder for myself.
Exactly.
To get to that, right? And I think, as a young person, if someone's listening to this, and I think the one thing that I would always say is there's an opportunity cost. As economic students, we've always talked about opportunity cost. Do I really want to spend the time in explaining my mom and dad that I love painting so much, over why com law is a great career, but I can still make money in painting? Like, do I really want to do that at that particular time? Or once I achieve something, everything, give everyone the tick boxes for my mom and dad, then maybe I can bring in the topic. I think it's really difficult to make that opportunity cost for a lot of young people. And I've seen that in my own friends, where I'm sitting then explaining to them that, hey, look, these two, you got to weigh up what you're going to pick, but you have to one day. And I've seen it in my own family, where my brother has done engineering with no use. Now he's in politics. So I think that's a really great example to bring into this
I want to add
conversation.
one thing, Nidhi, before we move on, because it's such a huge thing, especially in South Asian communities. And like you said, if there's anyone right now that's listening that is a teenager, that is still in school, what I want to say is I never ended up finishing my VC exams. And this being year 12 was the biggest thing in your life. For me not to be able to sit my exams was like such a huge thing at that time. It blew my mind, and it had to stretch my parents' mind as well. I had some health issues that came up. And on the other side of that, I want to tell anyone that is struggling in school, or you're having anxiety, depression, that your VC exams, they're not the end and be all. Like our parents are used to this certain way of education system where it is do or die, but people, like, we need to understand that in our society that we live in today, it's not really like that. That there are ways to get to where you want to be that can be easier and more tailored to you. And I just wanted to say that in case anyone was there experiencing what I did when I was 18, like the whole world blows up. But it's like, no, like, you're okay. Like, life doesn't have to be perfect, and there's more than one way. And actually, I'm thankful because I got to stop and recorrect rather than doing like a whole engineering degree and then changing into politics. So I just wanted to share that.
Super important. Yeah, really good
That
call.
is really important. I think we were having recently in our household a chat where we are imagining a world where every career is a great career. Hopefully, one day when my kid comes up and says, "I want to be a painter," be like, "Cool, nice job, like good, go to this college, great, whatever." Like, don't even get a degree at this point. I think, and it's normalizing day by day, and seeing that is really positive. I want to just quickly get on one topic, specifically on romantic relationships or friendships or parents. Um, how do you get out of that? It is an unhealthy relationship. We recognized it. How do you get out of the feeling of, but I can fix it? But I can really get this, like, I can put it to the way I want it. How do you get out of that and wanting to chase that unhealthy relationship so bad that you will ending up, in your head, wanting to fix it to become a healthy relationship? I'll open it up to anyone who would like to answer on that one, but that's a good, I think, a way to kind of go on to, do we really need to have that fixing mentality? Do we really want to be Bob the Builder here or not?
I love the Bob the Builder analogy, but I will say a couple of things. And this is, I think, particularly in relation to romantic relationships, because in the other relationships where it might not be healthy enough or as healthy as it could be, sometimes you're tied to those relationships. If you've got a healthy, unhealthy relationship with your parents, for instance, or your siblings, then it's not like you can just walk off forever. They're going to play some part in your life, large or small. And those are the relationships you should try to keep as healthy as it possibly can get. I mean, it might not be perfect, but you definitely need to try. With romantic relationships, people feel that sometimes they have a choice. That, you'll meet a lot of people who will say, the first sign I see that that person is not right for me, I'm going to walk away. But Nidhi, you spoke earlier about opportunity costs. Now, at heart, we all are afraid of looking silly outside, and sometimes you feel that a bad choice reflects on you as a person, or at least you think that's how other people see you, and that could be a reason why you're digging your heels in and trying to fix a very unhealthy romantic relationship. Other times you might not see it build up. It could be little things, but over time you've given a little inch here, a little centimeter there, and over time you're too entangled to come out. If your relationship is conflict ridden, but it still feels safe, then you do have some scope of turning that into a healthier relationship. But if in a romantic relationship you find that you are always the one who's giving in, you're going where the other person leads you, if you sense that there's a lot of control going on, there's emotional blackmail going on, then no, then get out. You don't need to be Bob the Builder. Remember that you're a romantic partner, not necessarily that person's parent. So it's not your job to fix that person so they're perfect. You're the romantic partner and you're equal in that relationship. And I think Chaturi made a comment about there are many options. Now, there are many ways of getting to Sydney. You could go on the Hume, straightforward, 8.5 hours, you're in Sydney, but the scenery is dull as ditch water. Or you could take the Pacific Highway, take the long scenic road. You still arrive in Sydney, but maybe in 14, 15 hours. Doesn't matter. So if some things take time, that's not a problem. But yeah, you do need to recognize the signposts, which are giving you indications on whether you're going in the right direction or not.
and be able to take that step wherever that journey is. If you have to turn
Absolutely.
around in that 14-hour journey, turn around because you don't want to be in the wrong destination. Like, no. And I would also like to recognize Swati has made a really great comment in having these conversation about careers with their parents, particularly at the start, or when you're exploring your career, because it just financially it's a great decision to make, I would say. um, let's open up the field on what are boundaries and why are they so important. I think the word boundary is very new to South Asian community. A lot of people don't even recognize it because it doesn't exist. Especially in
So true.
it's what is
Boundaries.
boundaries, like what? So let's say we are introducing this kind of topics to someone. How would you kind of explore that topic of boundaries and why it's so important to have such cutoffs, to kind of, for the long run, for it to be better? It feels weird at the start, it's very foreign, but to kind of, for the long run, you're setting yourself really, for higher standards, I would say, or better communication. Maybe Raj or Chaturi, anyone?
Yeah, I'd love to speak on boundaries because we need boundaries to protect ourselves. And when we hear about stories of domestic violence and those things, we have to think we like if we want our friends, we want ourselves, we want our families to be protected from those things. We want them to be strong, to be able to say no and know that they deserve more. So boundaries are a way that we enforce that, even though I don't know right now, like if I will meet someone or if I will be happy, that I value myself enough to make that choice and step into the unknown because I believe I can have better. A lot of people don't believe that they can have better. So I think it's important. And I also want to touch this quickly. Like I like to look at both sides because sometimes my clients listen to something and they get narrow vision. But boundaries also, we can overprotect ourselves by fear of rejection. We don't want to get hurt, so we never date. So it's about knowing which end you stand on, I think.
And I think differentiating between barriers and boundaries is really important. Like, not having a facade is very different to boundaries. Raj, did you want to add into that?
Oh no, I completely agree with what Chaturi said. I don't know how to talk about boundaries really. I would say for me that I've never really had to, that it's not never really been crossed for me. Maybe I've been super lucky, or I've just had really I have amazing friends, so I guess it's just never kind of, in the workplace it has definitely,
Yeah.
but then you have a whole other bunch of mechanisms going across where there's a whole formal process with all that kind of stuff. It's a little bit less awkward in the process of it getting resolved. Whilst with friends, I think it's a little bit difficult. But
Mm.
I have actually talking through that process. There has been probably a couple of times when boundaries have been crossed when I was with friends, and actually that was a bit of a point for me to decide, do I continue with this friendship or not? Especially if it was a repeated crossing of the boundary in terms of that behavior. There's been quite a few friendships and relationships at uni or when I was growing up where I was like, okay, this person's values are completely different to mine in terms of they've crossed the boundary a couple of times now. So maybe we just have different values. So I'm not going to be rude to them, but in terms of developing this relationship with this person and growing this
Yeah.
friendship, it's a hard pass for me now. So I'll be polite to them, but I just won't engage in that kind of, because our values don't align. So we're just going to be crossing heads all the time. So, and a couple of times it was like a little bit sad because they were offensive to my other friends and I kind of wasn't copying it, but because I was friends with that person, that's enough of a cross for me. So that was it.
Yeah.
They made my friend uncomfortable. I'm best friends with that person. That's cool. I'm done with this. So, and most of the time it's worked out. Can't say it's been too negative. Having boundaries are important, I think.
What about you, Anu? In terms, I would say specifically, maybe in terms of families, lockdown has really told us what
Yes,
boundaries are.
I would love to hear about that.
Yeah. How would you set boundaries to your blood relations?
I think that's the most important people to have boundaries with. I really do think so. And I think, and I hope there are some South Asian parents listening to this today, because one of the things I've always found very cognitive dissonance around is parents expect their children to say yes to everything they're asking them to do, but somehow miraculously they're expecting children to say no to other people. So if you've never taught your children how to say no and hold your boundary, to expect an 18-year-old to suddenly say no to friends who are asking them to come out and do fun things like, maybe go to a party, drink, or stay out late. How is the child suddenly supposed to say no to that when you've never allowed them to say no safely to you? And I think safety is the big thing here. Children need to feel safe when they're telling their parents no and they're setting their boundaries for themselves. But if they don't get that sense of comfort and safety, they're not going to say no when the stakes are higher. And
Mm.
like everything, you have to get on a tricycle first, then you have to get on a bike with training wheels, then perhaps a cycle, and then perhaps somebody will give you a car with a license in it. But if you don't start with those small steps and we don't allow our children to say no to things, or at least advocate for themselves, you're never going to be able to set boundaries when you're older. And it's a very important life skill. I think that's really important.
And I
Completely.
think if you're always just saying yes or always just trying to compromise, that opens you up to so much damage by other people. I have been raised in a family of compromisation. It's all right. We'll just be fine. She'll be all right, kind of thing. However, as we've grown up, seeing my brother put boundaries down, be like, no, this is a hard no. This is not happening. It was a really difficult conversation to have, but to see that in a bigger benefit of where before my mom and dad they're saying something, they would consider, okay, do we really want to ask this from Nidhi or not? And I think that really puts them in growth as well, because they don't have a booklet to be how to be parents. They're learning from us. This is what they're getting, and we're the experiment kids where we're giving things back to be able to see how this will pan out. Raj,
Yeah.
did you want to add something?
I just
I just wanted to say, Anu brings up a great point, and I also think that saying no and having boundaries, at least in my experience, has been a sort of a rebellious thing to do, and it's kind of ridiculous to think that
Mm,
that saying no and having boundaries is somehow flipped to be disrespectful. Like, you're a disrespectful child. You're clearly not respecting your parents. Look at all these things we've done for you to be able to do it. So for you to say no is horrendously like a slap in our face. And it wasn't until I was older that I realized that it wasn't out of disrespect, but I was led to believe that. And it was more just like must have been trying to protect myself from an early age, but clearly it wasn't working. So no, because saying no wasn't working with them, and I believed up until I was older that just this saying no is disrespecting my parents, and I don't want to do that. So
mm.
it was very difficult for me to
I
have.
think that's another road to becoming a people pleaser, because you're just always ready to say yes, being like, "Yep, it's all right. I can do it, even if I'm dying inside." It's something that I've signed it up for it. I have to do it now. I think this is a good lead on questions to maybe Chaturi um, is actually not a good lead on, but um, going into romantic relationships, the topic that I love, being single in lockdown. At what point do young people introduce their parents to their romantic partners? Why? Why not? Is that possible? Is that real? Can I tell them that I'm going on a date?
yeah, so it's a tricky one because it is a case by case thing. And for me myself, I have a relationship with my mum which is quite casual, and I can tell her, and I know I'm lucky in that department because a lot of my peers will tell me this is a difficult conversation, even when I try to say like meeting someone maybe of a different ethnicity, that it doesn't go down very well. And I really think it has to do with how open minded a parent is and trusting. So a person, if I think I think it comes down to how comfortable that parent feels within their own ability to resource and have secure relationships versus that a parent might be more fearful, might not understand that you can have non-binary people, like all of those different kind of conversations that I think it's a case by case basis. I know that because it's South Asian community in general, we're a little bit more repressed. But from my experience, what I've seen is it's such a case by case basis thing.
And I think it's the way I would describe it is walking through a land full of mines. You know, those as soon as maybe you're stepping it really safe by telling them, "Hey, I went on a date." That's fine. But as soon as you tell them, "We held hand," boom, there's a bomb attack. You know, that's something that you gotta test out, as in like, okay, I gotta feel the ground before I step on it completely. What about in terms of Swati made a really good comment of how would it the experience vary depending on the gender. We have female panelists more than male panelists today, but I would say as a female, it was a disaster in my household. We had a family meeting, but I think there was a comfort in being uncomfortable because it had to happen one day. And I think finding that uncomfortableness and be ready for all those questions, not just mentally, but be ready for those uncomfortable conversation and tell them that this is also making me uncomfortable is really important. I think communication on both sides is really important. Maybe Raj, can you shed a little light on how would that go differently? Maybe.
Yeah, I think being a boy in our community, at least in the past, has been definitely easier than the friends that I had who were girls. We definitely, and I don't take that for granted at all. We definitely have it a little bit easier. So I don't feel like we have too much to complain about. The only thing I would say is that in terms of telling parents, it definitely is a case by case basis, at least in my experience. We did have a conversation. I did have a conversation with my parents, and it was more around like, yes, you can open up to us. I was like, all right, cool. So I did. And then that relationship was used as leverage for like why my life was going so bad. So I quickly didn't do that moving forward. So it was like, oh, you're not getting distinction average anymore. It must be because you're going out with that girl. Oh, you didn't want to work anymore. Oh, it's because you're going out with that girl. So I was like, how am I going to win in this situation? So I just sort of would say that, yeah, I think it's a complete case by case basis for that too. But I think you'll get it. Again, me talking about feelings a lot, I think you would know. I think you'll feel like if you're confident enough and you have that safety, as Anu was saying earlier, with your parents, then you should just go it. And sometimes you do need to throw caution to the wind and kind of break the ice a little bit. And I would say in that situation, be brave. You've lived up until this long. You're not made of glass. You'll continue to just roll with the punches as well. So I would say be brave in that situation too, I think.
Mm. And maybe Anu, you can add on to it from a parent's perspective. What do they might feel? And let's just put another spin to it. Let's say that they're newly migrated parents. They haven't done this love marriage stuff before. It's the first time that they're hearing their daughter coming to them and saying, "By the way, I've met someone called Shiv, and he's great, and I want to get married to him." How would they react to this?
Well, hopefully, the offspring have come before they've decided to tie the knot. I think that would be most important. I think there's a couple of things again here, which, and I think Mehek had that question about what does it look like. I think, firstly, yeah, from a family perspective on dating, that's true. That was a question I was trying to look at. I think a lot of people, say in my position, who are first generation migrants, new migrants, we need to understand that just because your child goes on a date, it's not wedding bells tomorrow. A date
Exactly.
is just a date. So parents need to start thinking about that, like you're not making a decision at say 18 or 20 just because you've gone on one date, like this is the person that's going to be true for you for the rest of your life. Things need to build. And that's something I think a lot of parents find difficult to come to terms with, because they might have had marriages where they've met the person a few times, the families have known each other, and they've gotten married. So they think that's how it's going to work. Now, we are in a different time, and we're also in a different continent, and we're in a different cultural setup. So parents need to understand that. And I think also being fair to the parents from the young people's perspective, you can't throw a bomb like that if you have not built some ground to move
Mm,
into that to
yeah.
start with. And what are parents looking for? Parents are looking for things like, does my child know how to make good decisions? Have they demonstrated that they've made good, considered decisions? Are they clear about what they want in the relationship? Are they clear about what their life goals are? So, hopefully, if you've built a healthy relationship with your parents over time, you can have a conversation about, I really like this person, or I'm going on a date with this person, and explaining to them what that means, and demonstrating to parents that you know where your boundaries are with the person that you're dating. Because that's the other unsaid thing that parents are really worried about. Oh my God, she's going on a date. What are they going to do? So if you can
Mm.
have that safe conversation with your parents, like, this is what a date looks like, and this is what it doesn't look like. I'm not
Yeah.
eloping with him. We are not getting married tomorrow. It may not even be the right person. So we prepare them for that. And it also depends on the person that you're talking about. Like, the person might come from, like Chaturi said, a different, community, a different religion, a different ethnicity. But is there a value match? Do you think, if you're serious about this person, does this person share similar values to you? Because if you are in fact contemplating a longer term relationship which may or may not end in a marriage, is that the person that you're going to be bringing to family celebrations for Diwali or Christmas for the next 30 years? How is that going to happen? Is this person someone that is going to be respectful of you, your family, and your customs and practices, which may or may not be very important to you, but it is important to your parents? And how much are you willing to compromise on some of that? Now, Nidhi used the word compromise. If you're giving something up, then you're compromising. But if you're working together to find a happy ground, that's collaborating. So, as
Love
people, we need to recognize, what does compromise look like and what does collaboration look like.
Mm.
So, yeah, so I would
And
love
I
to get
think
your thoughts.
And I think there's we've learned in our workplace where if you have a difficult situation with someone, particular
Yep,
individual, you always take them aside, not call them out in a group, not do it
yep,
over a coffee. You need to really have a set. I think that needs to bring into families as well. This is not something that you just blur out in front of everyone. This is
yep,
something that you literally make some time and say, okay, I really need to talk to you guys about something. Can we please like sit down and have a conversation about this? I think that's really important to create the environment to be able to tackle this topic together, and to also say safe words like, okay, this is something that I'm opening up to you about. Feel free to ask any questions, but yeah, this is something that I want to tell you guys because it's been heavy on my heart. I think because being being conscious of the time, I would also like to say that Swati made a great point. I think this is something that's being stuck in the migrant timeline here, and
yep.
I think and I swear I want to just tell them to go watch Lagan because there's a love story in there. And I'm just like, this is 19 something. So if they're having a love story, why am I getting stuck? Maybe maybe I'll move on to Raj with a question about friendships, where work and friendships. When do you think you're comfortable enough with friends to start opening up? When can you let the facade go down? I have had several conversations with my friends where I'm just like, why can't you just tell me this before? Like, come on, bro. And they're just like, I didn't want to share it to you back then. So how do you think, when do you think is the right time for me to open up to my bestie that I made yesterday?
That is a really good question. Again, I think there's definitely a level of comfort and safety involved in this. And I would say that it's actually the best friends that I have are because we went through experiences together. So actually, that was my prerequisite. So we went through, I don't know, to music festivals together. We did like, got smashed together, got drunk together. We did all the stuff together. So we had grouped experiences together. And that kind of led me to think that's my trigger for how I can open up to this person. Also, they have never really, like, when I did make this friendship group, it was the first time that I was being laughed with rather than laughed at, which was mostly through high school because I don't know, it was a bit off center, a bit weird. But at uni, all those quirks made me got me great relationships and great friends. So I would say for me, it was through a feeling, but also through shared experiences, repeated shared experiences that I got comfortable, and I actually just went for it and told people. Sometimes some of the things that I say is that I used to have OCD, and that's why I'm a little bit unique in the way I like close my pencil case and blah blah blah. And so people would bring that up, and I just was open about it, and it worked out in the end for me.
And I think when it comes to friendships, I think I always try to think, yes, this is supposed to last really long time, but if we're vibing right now, let's go with it. Like
Totally.
let's have that positivity. Doesn't matter if it's going to last 3 days, 10 years, 2 days. Just to have that positivity with the other person is enough for me to not question the future yet. I think just stopping your thinking, as in like, am I having fun? Good. Is this person vibing with me? Great. Do not think about the third day because we're not ready for that yet.
Absolutely. Be present in your life.
Yeah. And maybe a last question to kind of close off. How do you ensure, this is particularly to Anu, and maybe Chaturi can chime in after Anu. How do we ensure our community has positive and nourishing environment, an open environment where I, as a girl or as a woman or whatever it is, being able to explore my feelings with them and kind of take my parents and my friends and my romantic relationships with me instead of trying to have 15 different files of life that I have to juggle?
Oh, what a great question. I want to hear the answer.
Geez, if I answer, do I get the prize? Because I think I should. Like the right answer. But no, seriously, that is so important. I think it's work in progress. I think we are not there yet, but we will get there. I think as a starting point, each one of us can just set judgment aside. I think that's really important. One of the reasons we end up in toxic relationships and unhealthy relationships is because we are judging others, and those are informing our opinions, and we are scared. Parents are scared that if my child doesn't do that, how is that going to reflect on me as a parent and us as a family? Because I've made those judgments about someone else's daughter who perhaps was in a relationship with someone of a different ethnicity. So because you've been judgy about them, you're afraid that they're going to be judgy about you. That causes a lot of angst. And I think if we want a healthier community, if we can ditch the judgment, we're making a good start.
Love that.
I think dropping judgment as a whole South Asian community, because I've always said it, with South Asian community, we have so much hate within ourselves. We can't even think about the other the other countries yet because we haven't even figured our own community out. But I think, yeah, dropping the judgment and being ready for those conversations is really important, and not having that set westernized way. I think that's really important to just drop at this point, because I'm done with everything that I do is like, oh, you're just Western now. No, I'm not modern or Western. It's just the way of life. I'm growing. Right? So being ready to have those conversations. Does anyone want to chime in, kind of close off anything that they haven't said yet or they want to say out loud to the panelists? Anything about family, romance, friendship, anything?
I would say that in our community, sometimes I think we do judge ourselves and other people's a little bit more harshly, and we care about perception a little bit too much. For me, I think work on your confidence and be brave in your upbringing, and I think it'll set you up for your adolescence quite well.
I think that's perfect, and I think summarizing everyone's comment is to know when trust, feel safe, growth, time is always a part of it, and also building that environment around you to kind of have those talks with your parents is really important. And I think, thank you so much to everyone. I think that was a great summary of healthy relationships. Hopefully I will not be making bad choices, but if I am, it's called learning for now. Um, we will have two more chats coming along in the coming weeks about mental health. So stay tuned on this channel. I would also like to thank everyone in the comments, Swati, Mehek, Prathiti, everyone who's been contributing, Priyanka. Thank you so much for your comments and love. And also there are resources available, I think, somewhere in BCU or somewhere, I think. And if anyone needs to reach out, I'm sure all the panelists are reachable at this point. They can be reached out to personally or through the professional channels. And yeah, I think this has been a great chat. Thank you everyone for coming along. And I'm not sure how to end this, but I'm just going to ask my tech to help. Uh, how will I be able to end this tech? The one thing that I would like to say before ending it would be relationships are hard. Acknowledge it. It will work out. There's a silver lining in the end, one step at a time with everything. And love
Can
can
I,
be found in so many ways, not just one way. There's
can I
love.
just say one thing to finish it off?
Yes, of course.
Don't be scared of the long scenic route.
Correct.
Yeah.
And don't be scared of taking a U-turn either. Like, I'm not saying don't take a U-turn, but if you need to take a U-turn
Don't
or
take the U-turn.
trust it
Handbrake.
and go with it.
Do it.
But yeah, as I said, thank you so much for coming along. Just to close it off, just in 1 minute, maybe you guys can tell if someone needs to reach out to you guys. How would they be able to reach out? Anu, maybe you can go first.
You can find me on Facebook and LinkedIn.
Oh, okay, yeah. You can find me on Facebook and LinkedIn too.
Yeah.
You guys can find me at Instagram at Mental Health Specialist.
And if someone like me enough, you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Snapchat, everywhere. But yeah, thank you so much. And maybe I'll just ask the IT to kind of close off the meeting. And if anyone has anything, please comment below and we should be all good.